Chapter 35, The Machine Man. The machine man is the most unhappy beast that exists in this valley of tears, but he has the pretentiousness and even the insolence to call himself the king of nature. Nose te ipsum, man, know thyself. This is an ancient golden proverb written on the invincible walls of the temple at Delphi in ancient Greece. The man and woman of our times, that poor intellectual animal that mistakenly classifies himself as man, has invented thousands of very complicated and intricate machines. He knows very well that to be able to use a machine, one sometimes needs long years of study and training. But when it comes to himself, he totally forgets this fact, even though he himself is a machine more complicated than all the ones that he has invented. There is no man that is not filled with totally false ideas about himself. The most serious of all is that he does not want to realize that he really is a machine. The human machine does not have freedom of movement. It only functions through multiple and varied internal influences and external shocks. All movements, actions, words, ideas, emotions, feelings, desires of a human machine are provoked by external influences and by multiple, strange, and difficult internal causes. The intellectual animal is a wretched talking puppet with memory and vitality, a living doll that has the silly illusion that it can do, when in reality it cannot do anything. Consider that the doll is alive, falls in love, speaks, walks, desires, wages wars, etc. Consider that this doll can change owners at any moment. You should consider that each owner is a different person, a person who has his own criteria, his own form of enjoyment, feeling, living, etc. Any owner wanting to obtain money will push certain buttons and then the doll will dedicate itself to business. Another owner, half an hour later or several hours later, will have a different idea and will make his doll dance and laugh. A third will make him fight. A fourth will make him fall in love with a woman. A fifth will make him fall in love with another woman. A sixth will make him fight with a neighbor and create a problem for himself and the police. And a seventh will make him change his address. In fact, the doll in our example has done nothing but he thinks that he has. He has the illusion that he does when in fact he cannot do anything because he does not have an individual being. Undoubtedly, everything occurs just as when it rains, when it thunders, when the sun warms us. But the poor doll thinks that he can do. He has the silly illusion that he has done everything, but in reality he has done nothing. Their respective owners have amused themselves with the poor mechanical doll. This is the way the poor intellectual animal is, dear reader, a mechanical doll, just as in our illustrative example. He thinks he does when in fact he does nothing. He is a flesh and blood puppet controlled by a legion of energetic, subtle entities who, as a whole, constitute that which is called the pluralized ego. The Christian gospel classifies all those entities as demons, and their true name is legion. What originates the illusion of unity and integrity in the intellectual animal is partly the sensation of having a physical body, partly his name and surname, and partly memory and mechanical habits implanted in the memory by education or acquired by simple and silly imitation. The poor intellectual animal will not be able to stop being a machine. We will not be able to change, acquire true individual being, and transform himself into a real man as long as he does not have the courage to eliminate, through in-depth understanding and in a successive order, each of those metaphysical entities which as a whole constitute the ego, the myself. Each idea, passion, vice, affection, hatred, desire, etc. has its corresponding entity, and the mass of all of those entities is the pluralized ego of revolutionary psychology. All those metaphysical entities, all those selves, which as a whole constitute the ego, do not have a true bond between them. They do not have coordinates of any type. Each of those entities depends totally on circumstances, change of impressions, happenings, etc. The screen of the mind changes colors and scenes at each instant. Everything depends on the entity that at any given instant controls the mind. On the screen of the mind, the different entities that in their entirety constitute the psychological ego pass through in a continuous procession. The diverse entities that constitute the pluralized ego associate themselves, they dissociate themselves from certain special groups according to their affinities, they quarrel among themselves, they argue, they avoid each other, etc. Each entity of the legion called self, each small self, believes itself to be everything, the total ego. It does not even remotely suspect that it is only the least part. The entity that today swears eternal love to a woman is displaced later on by another entity that has nothing to do with such an oath, and then dreams crumble to the floor and the poor disillusioned woman cries. The entity that today swears fidelity to a cause is displaced tomorrow by another entity that has nothing to do with such a cause, and then the person withdraws. The entity that today swears fidelity to Gnosis is displaced tomorrow by another entity that hates Gnosis. Teachers of schools, colleges, and universities should study this book of fundamental education and, for humanitarian purposes, have the courage to guide students on the wonderful path of the revolution of conscience. It is necessary that students understand the need to know themselves in all the areas of the mind. A more efficient intellectual orientation is needed. It is necessary to understand what we are, and this should begin from the desks at school. We do not deny that money is needed to eat, to pay the rent of the house, and dress ourselves. We do not deny that intellectual preparation is needed, a profession, a way of making money. But that is not all. That is secondary. The first and fundamental part is to know who we are, what we are, where we came from, where we are going, what is the purpose of our existence. It is unfortunate to continue as automatic dolls, miserable mortals, machine men. It is urgent to stop being mere machines. It is urgent to become true men. A radical change is needed, and this should begin precisely with the elimination of each of those entities which as a whole constitute the pluralized ego. The poor intellectual animal is not a man, but he has within him a latent state all the possibilities to transform himself into a man. It is not a law, the development of those possibilities. The most natural thing is for them to be lost. Only through great super efforts can such human possibilities be developed. There is much to be eliminated, and there is much to be acquired. It is necessary to do an inventory to find out how much is surplus and how much we are lacking. It is clear that the pluralized ego is unnecessary. It is something useless and harmful. It is logical to say that we have to develop certain powers, faculties, and capabilities that the machine man attributes to himself and believes he has, but in fact he truly does not have. The machine man believes he has true individuality, awakened conscience, conscious willpower, the power to do, and he has none of these. If we want to stop being machines, if we want to awaken conscience, to have true conscious willpower, individuality, and the capacity to, it is urgent to start by knowing ourselves and then dissolving the psychological ego. When the pluralized ego is dissolved, only the true being remains within us.